I said, okay, I'll get in touch with him. I said, but I got to tell you, this is not going to be a day at the beach.
Oh, folks, what do you mean is it real? Is that real? Go ahead, do it.
Hello? I said, hey, Prince, Damon. He said, oh, my God. He said, man, Red is going to be so gassed when he hears you on the phone.
He don't know how to answer the question, man, because he's not really good looking. You know, his face was different, but he'd been punched to look like this.
Not up. He showed out, and not in a nice way. I told him this is not going to be a day at the beach.
Don't get me on your show playing your game. I'm not a comedian.
Yes, you are.
I'll take you in the rain.
You're funny looking. Water. Did you ever get drunk and go home and sit on the toilet and throw up in the face bowl?
I don't have empathy for people that do things to themselves.
That's good. You married? That's better.
The world kicks you in the head. That's one thing. But when you don't do what you're supposed to do, I have no sympathy or empathy for you at all.
It was the funeral of a legend. Red Foxx, the comedic giant who broke barriers and redefined television, had passed away. But as the tributes rolled in and the pews filled with friends, fans, and fellow stars, one face was noticeably missing: Demond Wilson, the man who stood beside Foxx on screen for years as his TV son, Lamont. Why wasn't he there? The question has haunted fans for decades. Their chemistry on Sanford and Son was electric. They weren't just co-stars, they were family, or so it seemed. Behind the laughter was relationship unraveling, one filled with silence, suspicion, and scars that never quite healed. Did Demond Wilson betray Red Foxx when he needed him most? Was there a moment when loyalty fractured? Could their iconic partnership have ended any other way? And what really kept Wilson from attending? In this video, we dive deep into one of television's most tragic friendships, how two trailblazers changed pop culture forever, only to become strangers by the end. From early love to final estrangement, and the cold absence that spoke louder than words at Foxx's funeral, we're telling the full story. Because sometimes the people who make us laugh the hardest leave behind the most painful silences. Before the fallout, before the fame, Red Foxx and Demond Wilson shared something rare: genuine admiration and respect. When Sanford and Son premiered in 1972, it was more than a sitcom. It was a revolution. For the first time, a black father-son duo led a primetime TV show that didn't shy away from real issues or real laughs. Behind the scenes, the bond between Foxx and Wilson was real. Red, already a seasoned performer from the Chitlin circuit and Vegas comedy clubs, took Demond under his wing. He lobbied for Wilson to receive top billing, fighting to ensure his young co-star wasn't treated as just a supporting player, but as an equal partner. He saw potential in Wilson, not just as an actor, but as a rising star. Wilson admired Foxx's raw talent and boldness. Their energy on screen was unscripted magic, a rhythm of barbs, timing, and unspoken affection. They weren't just playing Fred and Lamont. They were Fred and Lamont, channeling something familiar to every black household watching. In those early seasons, their connection felt unbreakable. Fans sighed, the cast members felt it, and for a time, it seemed like nothing could come between them. But Hollywood tests even the strongest bonds. By the third season of Sanford and Son, Red Foxx had become a cultural phenomenon, but not one satisfied. Behind the scenes, he was growing increasingly frustrated with NBC. The show was a ratings juggernaut, yet Foxx felt the network was not paying him what he was worth. Worse, he believed racial inequity played a role in how he was being treated compared to white network stars. Red wasn't just asking for more money, he was demanding respect. He wanted better working conditions, creative input, and fair compensation that matched his contribution to the show's success. But NBC pushed back. The negotiations grew tense. Foxx, never one to mince words or back down, began to use his leverage. This wasn't just about dollars, it was about dignity. Foxx believed that if he didn't stand up for himself, no one else would. He was carrying one of the most groundbreaking shows on television, and yet he felt disposable. Demond Wilson, still early in his career, watched as the man who mentored him went to war with the very system that made them famous. And while Wilson agreed with many of Foxx's complaints, what happened next forced him to make a decision that changed everything. In 1974, during the height of Sanford and Son, Redd Foxx made a dramatic move. He walked off the show. Negotiations with NBC had reached a breaking point, and Foxx refused to return until his demands were met. Production halted, audiences were shocked, and the network scrambled to keep the show afloat. In Foxx's absence, NBC promoted Whitman Mayo's character Grady to fill the gap, but it wasn't the same. Viewers missed Fred Sanford, and more importantly, so did Demond Wilson. As the man left to carry the show, Wilson felt the pressure mount. He showed up, hit his marks, and tried to hold the show together. But to Redd Foxx, Wilson's decision to stay felt like a betrayal. Redd had expected Wilson to walk out in solidarity or at least make a public statement of support. Instead, Wilson honored his contract, continued acting, and stayed mostly silent. The bond they once shared began to crack. The laughter they created together started to feel forced and hollow. And though Foxx would eventually return to the show under a new deal, the fallout from that walkout would change everything. What had once been brotherhood had become business, and in Hollywood that rarely ends well. When Redd Foxx finally returned to Sanford and Son, it wasn't with an apology, it was with a massive paycheck. NBC, desperate to salvage one of their top shows, met many of his demands. Foxx came back with higher pay, more creative control, and a clear message. He was the star, and he knew it. But things weren't the same on set. The energy had shifted. The camaraderie that once fueled every scene between Fred and Lamont now felt strained. Foxx's return didn't just bring new terms, it brought new tension. Demond Wilson, who held the show together during Foxx's absence, was still earning significantly less. He had kept the engine running, yet now felt sidelined. The respect Foxx once had for Wilson seemed diminished, and Wilson, hurt and frustrated, began to withdraw emotionally. Scenes were delivered with professionalism, but the warmth was gone. It was clear to the cast and crew that something had broken. Foxx, emboldened by his contract and creative authority, became more isolated and controlling. He surrounded himself with his own circle, often rewriting scenes or pushing for changes that suited his vision. Wilson, once a bright, ambitious young actor, found himself increasingly frustrated and disillusioned. Worse, the pay gap remained glaring. Despite Wilson's pivotal role, his compensation didn't reflect his value. It wasn't just about money, it was about principle. The man who once fought for his recognition now seemed to barely acknowledge him. Producers and crew described the atmosphere as tense and uncomfortable. The synergy that once defined Sanford and Son was gone, replaced by a cold professionalism. Two men who had once made history together now moved through the same space like strangers. It was clear, whatever friendship they had had was no longer salvageable, and the show was paying the price. By the final season in 1977, Sanford and Son was still drawing viewers, but the spark was gone. The show that had once revolutionized television had become a shadow of its former self, and at its heart were two men who no longer spoke beyond the script. Demond Wilson, once energized by the platform the show had given him, was now counting the days until it ended. He felt drained, overlooked by the network, disrespected by his co-star, and disconnected from the joy that had once driven his performance. Redd Foxx, though still delivering laughs, had grown distant, both emotionally and creatively. What was once groundbreaking television now felt like an obligation. The cast and crew sensed the tension. Smiles were strained, rehearsals were quick, and the behind-the-scenes atmosphere had grown cold. The show wrapped without fanfare. No heartfelt goodbye, no final moment of closure between Fred and Lamont, or between Foxx and Wilson, just a quiet fade to black. Behind the cameras, it was colder. The two actors didn't exchange parting words, no hugs, no gratitude. Years of collaboration ended not with a bang, but with silence. Once the camera stopped rolling, the two men walked away from the show and from each other for good. After Sanford and Son, both Redd Foxx and Demont Wilson set off on very different paths. Foxx returned to stand-up comedy, doing what he loved most, commanding a live stage. His sharp humor and unapologetic persona were still magnetic, but he never found another role that matched the impact of Fred Sanford. Foxx did try to recapture his sitcom success. In 1980, he starred in Sanford, a short-lived spin-off. He also appeared in The Royal Family alongside Della Reese, but tragically died of a heart attack during filming in 1991. Wilson took a more radical turn. Disillusioned by the industry, he stepped away from Hollywood entirely. He became a born-again Christian and eventually an ordained minister. He authored books, spoke at churches nationwide, and rarely discussed his acting past publicly. In interviews, Wilson expressed a sense of peace about his new path, but he never fully opened up about his relationship with Foxx. Meanwhile, Foxx sometimes made biting remarks about Wilson and his routines, comments that hinted at lingering resentment.